Recording in progress.
Here we go. Hello, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning. It is still morning for me too. Noon for some of you.
Oh, yes. Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Well, Jay, you're sort of in our time zones anyway.
Yeah, hopefully for the most part. So we seem to just struck 12 there. We seem to be this noon Eastern time slot seems to be working pretty well for a lot of you, so that works. And I see Mario and Natalia and Mario from across the pond there.
Yeah.
You guys are staying up late-ish.
In France today.
Okay.
Oh.
And what time is it there?
6.
Okay. Not terrible.
Amy's in France too.
Mm-hmm. Right, all right. Looking forward to tallying up today, and I'll gonna post later after this call. I'm gonna make that actual donation, the first one, hopefully of so many more to Fragments of Hope Belize. So looking forward to getting an actual receipt so I can share officially. Pretty awesome to be able to do that, I think. So thank you all for that. Good to be back from vacation. Well, not really. It's a double-edged sword, right? I don't know. I'm trying to work where I vacation, permanent vacation, but also you can't have all the fun, right? Otherwise, and you can't do all the work. If you don't have one to offset the other, then it all kind of blends together. And then while there's no valleys necessarily, it doesn't feel like, like it's like a rut. It's also, also don't have the peaks, right? So it just becomes kind of the norm. Peaks and valleys, I think, are essential for everybody, for our well-being too. You got to have something to compare to, right? If it's all awesome, it still becomes flat, right? I was ready to come home. All right. Where were you?
He was gone for weeks. Said Washington was one of the places, right, Brian?
What about everybody else? Have you guys all been on doing any plans? I know the kids are out of school now, so this is usually, the next month or so is when everybody has their vacations planned. Anybody doing anything like that? No. See a couple of head shakes. No. More of the same. All right. Major remodeling.
Ooh.
They haven't broken up over there yet. Does that mean they're still in school? Oh, really? Okay. See you nodding yes. Okay. Don't know what the school season's like over there. So when's summer for you then? Like assuming there's a summer break or a break of some sort.
Yeah, summer break is starts next week, and they don't go back till the beginning of September. So we got 6 weeks of them being at home.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds about
Always
right.
a joy.
Yeah, sounds
trying to entertain small people sometimes is not fun. I can't get any work done.
I get it. We have a needy dog. At least your kids can go to the bathroom by themselves at some point.
Well, that is true. That is
Not
true.
that he's a chore. He's pretty good. He 2 to 3 times a day is not a big deal. He can hold it. Just funny. In the UK on vacation, Fort Lauderdale. How's Florida down there? They didn't get much of the hurricane, right? It went more west, I think, through Texas. I know it hit all the way up to Ontario, where my mom and sister family are from, and Stacy's family too. It went all the way up there, which is kind of crazy.
She said just some rain. All right, should I get started?
Let's do it.
Housekeeping? All right. Glad you're all here. Let's take a look. I just wanted to remind everyone to drop their homework for the niche research and design call. We only have a few in there at the moment, and the exercise is very helpful. So it would be good for you to do it if you like. Getting back feedback from Jay is only available 2 weeks following the call, so I just wanted to remind you all to jump in while you can. And then we just have some wins that I wanted to share. Elissa Burgess got her first bestseller badge, so yay.
Congrats.
Tina Callahan earned her first star seller badge.
Awesome.
Tara Wells had her 1-year Etsy anniversary and made $64K in revenue.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Carla Murphy had her first 5-figure month in June. Yay.
Nice, nice.
Tony Luti hit 50 sales, and it's probably higher by now.
Congratulations, Tony.
There you go. Kathy Schla, oh, I'm not sure.
Golliser?
Scholliser, maybe?
Maybe.
Sorry, Kathy. Mentioned that Karen Fleener Goulds has been very supportive to her. She mentioned that in the weekly check-in thread, and so that was so lovely to see.
Awesome,
Thank
Karen.
you,
Thank you so
Kathy.
much.
And Karen, yeah. And Sarah Little shared a design source, which I added to the water cooler. It has a lot of short and helpful tutorials on different styles of designs. It's a neat channel. They don't have a whole lot up yet, but it's worth taking a look at. I learned some things. So
Nice.
that's it for today, River, right now.
We'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess we'll get right into it here. We're already 5 minutes past. And we're going to typically do the design training and then the hot seat. But I think today, since we're doing the hot seats in 2 days anyway, this is kind of like the makeup. So we're going to do a design training. We'll keep the Q&A related to that. And it might go, a little longer than usual. So if we're going to run towards towards that full hour mark, then at least we can just save the hot seat stuff till we get a few more submissions from you guys in there on Wednesday. So the presentation today training is going to be about design layouts. You guys have said that I think t-shirts, mugs, and wall art, like posters and canvas prints and stuff, were the most popular based on what we had been seeing contributed. So I'm just going to share my screen here and we can get into it. All right, let me know if you guys can see that, and then I will present. Present. There we go. All right, that work? Everybody can see this? Yes. Yes, and congrats to all. It has been pretty awesome to see the milestones shared, and yeah, excited for all of you in there. So can you make it full screen? Is that full screen? Can you see that?
It is for me, so Mark, if it isn't for you, then go up into the upper right-hand corner and change your view to speaker view.
Yeah, it's full screen on my screen, so it should be.
Yeah.
All right, so today's overview is basically we're going to talk about the importance of good layout and design and layouts for POD specifically, of course. We're going to talk a little bit of recap on the basics of design layouts. We're going to touch on typography. It's going to be a little bit of like I said, a recap of the previous lesson. So that said, for those of you who are new-ish, who joined in the second wave, make sure you go back and go through that typography training. It's kind of foundational. I think it's one of the most crucial and foundational elements of graphic design in general. So make sure you go check that out. Then we're going to talk about specifically t-shirt design layouts and then poster design layouts. And that can be, a printed piece, a digital download, or something that you sell with POD, like in a frame or on canvas, right? And mug designs. And then of course we'll have our Q&A. And just a reminder that we're going to try to keep the Q&A, you know, related to the training as much as possible. If you have any questions otherwise, you know, or about anything outside of the training, then feel free to drop them in the questions chat or save them to the AMA in 2 weeks. So
Jay?
basics again. Yeah.
Usually people are gonna ask in a minute if we're gonna share the slide deck, so I just thought I'd put that out. You will, right?
Nope. Yes, of course. Yeah. Yes, definitely going to share the slide decks. You guys, it will be also recorded, so no sweat there. I still have the thumbnails. Still have the thumbnails of the participants up top. I don't know how to change that for you. I think that's gonna have to be something you figure out on your end. It's recording now, and I got it full screen over here, so I hope that works.
So there's different settings up. I don't know if you're on a phone or what, but you just have to go to view and choose the
Speaker.
setting. So, okay.
All right, so just a little bit of a recap here. It's typography is the art of arranging type to make written language legible, readable, and visually appealing. Choosing the right fonts, sizes, and styles is crucial because it can significantly impact how your message is perceived. For instance, and you've seen this before, I shared it in a typography one, but a script font might suggest, you know, some sort of elegance and evoke a welcomed emotional response, right? Like "You'll always be mine," seems caring, while a different bold or organic font might convey a slightly different, you know, kind of conviction, and a not so welcome "You'll always be mine" looks a lot more threatening when it's looks like it's scrawled in blood as opposed to, you know, written with a nice little heart on the end, right? So fonts, weighting, all matter. All right, so the basics here is one of the components is imagery, and imagery includes pictures or illustrations that you use in your design. Literally any element other than text, pretty much, right? Even little flourishes or floral elements, that's all part of the imagery element. So high resolution images, as we know, are a must. So we don't want anything that's pixelated or anything because they ensure clarity and professionalism. And the images should be relevant to your design and resonate with your target audience. For example, a vintage style image might work well with a retro themed t-shirt, but you're looking at a poster here. A vibrant, more modern graphic would obviously be better for a trendy poster. You can see, like, you know, you got the "I'm just here for the popcorn." As a text-based design alone, this works. As soon as you kind of add this retro element and the colors and the font choice, it just feels vintagey, right? And then, you know, the 3D glasses when they were still red and blue and not the gray that they are now. So it adds and complements. And then on the other side, you've got like a nice, you know, vibrant Star Wars poster here. Not my favorite movie, but I think Return of the Jedi still wins on that one. But next big one is color. And color plays a vital role in design. It can evoke emotions and set the tone of your product. Understanding color theory can help you create a cohesive color palette that enhances your design. And I do have a training that will be coming just on color theory alone. It's got its own kind of merits that way that I think everybody should, you know, learn about. For example, complementary colors can create a vibrant look. So we've got blue and orange here on the color wheel. They are complementary. You can see how it just makes things, it allows for maximum contrast, like white and black. You know, you've got the yellow and purple. It's based on the color wheel. It allows for maximum pop. So you've got the Florida Gators here. Traditional colors are the blue and the orange. You'll notice like green and red, popular Christmas time, yellow and purple, popular Easter. You know, these are all by design. These are not by chance, right? So that's by design to get the maximum pop with things that, you know, people want to especially market to. And another thing that on the marketing note is that, you know, what people don't know, I was just having this conversation with a neighbor 2 days ago, actually, that a lot of people don't know that Santa Claus is red and white in North America because of Coca-Cola. No other reason than marketing. So that's something that, you know, food for thought. Traditionally overseas, you guys know, over in Europe, it's been green or orange or yellow, right? There was never a red and white Santa until Coca-Cola came along. Yeah. And then, so while that said, with the similar colors can create a more harmonious feel, right? So if we go back here, you can say complementary colors can create a vibrant look, right? Lots of pop, but complementary or similar colors, sorry, can create a more harmonious feel. They're, similar, they're close to each other on the color spectrum, less obnoxious, more easygoing, typically more subtle. And that can also have, a resonance with the desired effect if that's what the design is trying to convey, right? Like easy tagger, chill out, relax, positivity is powerful, but without being, the opposites attracting here. You want to have complementary. And traditionally, oranges and yellows are colors of energy, right? And we got some basics here. So composition, this is something that you guys will see everywhere, but you may not know if you haven't ever taken a photography course or a graphic design course that this even exists. So composition is how you arrange the elements of your design. Good composition ensures that your design is balanced and visually pleasing. Techniques like the rule of thirds, symmetry, and asymmetry can help you create a compelling layout. For example, placing key elements along the lines of the rule of third grid can make your design more dynamic and engaging. This is something you guys may not have noticed, but everybody who creates thumbnails for their YouTube videos and stuff, rule of thirds. Typically, you'll see somebody's face right around this marker here, and it's about using the lines, but also where they intersect as the main points of interest. So your subject matter, the main is along the line, but the meat and potatoes, the most important stuff is going to intersect where the lines intersect. You've also got a major part of the design here. You've got a transitional period in the second row, and then the top row, you've got, the cloud and sky. Same goes here. You've got the clouds, then you've got the ocean, then you've got the earth. Big focal point right around this kind of axis here is the shell, right? So these are all done by design when you see, photography, YouTube thumbnails, poster design, t-shirt design. These are things that we want to keep in mind. Let me know if that makes sense so far. If you guys have any questions or anything.
Mario is asking, does this include the golden ratio? Only came across the term the other day.
I didn't include it in this one, but yeah, there is an element of that too. And it'll be evident when we get to the poster design element. You'll see kind of how it'll flow a little bit like that. But that's something that it's a mathematical swirl. For those who don't know, it's a mathematical thing that all things seem to have been innately designed by or with even occurring naturally. So it's a pretty interesting, phenomenon. But that's a something we'll talk about on another day for sure. But definitely a good point. One of the other major elements here for basics of design is balance. And balance involves distributing visual weight evenly in your design to create stability. This can be symmetrical, like this right here, where elements are mirrored on either side. You see that with butterfly designs a lot of the time. Or asymmetrical, where different elements are balanced in size and color. So while this is asymmetrical, this leaf right now, it still feels like it's weighted evenly on both sides. And you've got Van Gogh Starry Night here, totally asymmetrical, but you can see this big tree here is being offset in the bottom left by a brighter, bigger element on the right with the clouds running up, right? So these kind of counteract, and the image still feels balanced. It feels like if you laid it down on a, on your hand or something across here, it wouldn't tip, or on a scale, it wouldn't tip anyway. It still feels, uniformly weighted, right? And a balanced design, for that reason, feels stable and aesthetically pleasing. So here we're talking a little bit about, the golden ratio there, but visual hierarchy is about organizing your design so that the most important elements stand out. This can be achieved through size, color, and placement. For instance, making the headline the largest and boldest element ensures it catches the viewer's eye first. This is how every magazine cover, newspaper, design article, every article within a magazine as well, or any publication, are all created with this in mind. So you've got scale here. So by default, you can have the most important stuff bigger, and then, the secondary stuff a little smaller, but then all of it is still more important to be read. It's almost what people would consider today as the clickbait, right? It's the thing that grabs you the most, not just the words in the title, but like the imagery could be part of that too. The other one is contrast. So using different colors can help different elements and different contrasts stand out. So in this case, you might see, like over here with scale, we start with big and then we went smaller and then smaller. With the contrast, the one with the most pop might be something you read first. You might be drawn to headline first, and then up here to the imagery or something that wouldn't maybe have as much of a contrast, but it's just bigger in your face, and then down to the, traditional body of text. Direction is another one. So we've kind of got this kind of curve starting now. And when you have large amounts of horizontal text, it becomes almost boring, like mundane in a way to the eye. So introducing an element of direction and contrast will draw you right to that headline immediately, and then maybe followed up with an image or a different word or a subheading, and then something else to get you to the, the body copy, right? The goal of the headlines and the bigger elements are to make you interested enough to actually go through what most people would probably skip through, which is the body copy. And then we also have, of course, position. So you've got headline here, then you've got a nice big element, and then contrast coming down, and this kind of does that same circle. That was the golden ratio. It's kind of following a circle here. Like everything just seems to do that. Our eyes naturally want to go in circles. We don't want to go left to right, even though we're designed, like we're trained to read that way. We're designed, like our brains are wired to follow hierarchy and this natural element of kind of going around in a circle. So hopefully this makes sense so far. Here's a perfect example. I saw this on the internet. I didn't recreate it, but it's just ideal. So here we are. You will read this first, and then you will read this line next. You'll probably read this before the paragraph. And then this says you will go back and read this body copy if you want to know more. It takes the most effort to read because it has a lot of text in a small font and a lightweight with tight line spacing. Many people will skip paragraphs like this unless if they aren't engaged right away. This is why it's important to draw attention to your message using visual hierarchy. And then at some point, you may come back to read this line, or maybe not. Right? So it's kind of like a perfect example of how hierarchy and the flow can go. This is why I'm telling you typography is number one. Typography matters in every element of design if you're actually going to include any words at all. So the basics and principles and how it applies to POD is when designing for t-shirts, posters, and mugs, these principles must be adapted to suit the medium. So you can't necessarily just take a t-shirt design, put it on a mug, or put it on a poster, right? A t-shirt needs to consider how the design will look on different sizes. We've seen this with downscaling and stuff too. You may have to tweak it depending on the size of the garment also. A poster design should consider how it would be viewed from a distance, right? So like with a t-shirt design, typically, 5 to 6 feet is it, but a poster is intended to be viewed from across a room. A mug design needs to take into account the curvature and how a design will wrap around the mug. So we see this a lot even when it applies to the mock-ups. So if you were to center your design here, you are less likely to be impacted by the curve, right? So on the top and on the bottom is where you're going to see more of that wrap, and it almost could distort the design if you have very fine details around the edges. So you want to make sure that you don't run things too close to the edges to kind of make it look a little more warped or kind of out of shape that it should actually be. Understanding your target audience is crucial here, of course, and knowing who you're designing for helps you make informed decisions about typography, imagery, color, and composition. This is also why it's super important, like I've said a few times, to stick to one product until you nail it so that you're not all over the place. And if I couldn't express this any other way, this is exactly why. There's so many different things to think about when you're designing for specific products that will end up having you, get 5% better at each product versus getting way better at one product until you nailed it and it becomes almost second nature, right? That's why everything we do in life should become habits. There's like books like The Atomic Habits. In martial arts and karate, you have katas. You're just repeating them until it's perfect, and then you move on to the next, or you go up to the next belt, right? The goal is to make it, intuitive. So with t-shirt design, there are several key considerations to keep in mind. We've got size and placement of designs that we mentioned. And as it relates to a t-shirt, they're crucial for visibility and impact. Center designs are common, but you can also explore options like pocket prints, sleeve prints, or lower corner designs, right? Don't be afraid to, experiment a little bit, and always consider how the design will look on different sizes of shirts. If you have a big wordy shirt and it looks great on large sizes, it may not, translate the same on a youth size, for example, or on a baby onesie kind of thing, because it's just going to be too much and you literally have to be right in front of the baby to read it, right? What are three main types of designs that work well on t-shirts? They are obviously the text-based designs, which focus primarily on typography. And for that, we need to choose fonts that are readable and reflect the message's tone. Again, this is very much what we discussed in the typography training. The second kind are graphic-based designs. These rely on images or illustrations. You need to ensure that they are high resolution and relevant to your niche and audience, right? So if you just have a myriad of different kinds of designs, if you have like birds over here and then maybe, I don't know, soccer balls or something over here, it may not be the same kind of customer you're targeting at all, right? So you can still have an element of cohesion if you're doing design only, or image or graphic based designs only. And then of course we have mixed designs. So these combine, which is what you see as the most common, text and graphics. So balance is key here. Neither element should overpower the other, and they should all work kind of cohesively. So for that, I wanted to show you some text-based examples. We've got being a functional adult every day seems a bit excessive. And you can see how they've structured the line. So every line has its own importance. So being and then functional, because it's a main part of that. Every line is given its kind of own weight, it's giving its uniqueness, and it's done in a way that it's got a few different colors. It's more fun to read than if it was just all one color. We've got our classic that's happening here that's in my mom era. Everybody and their sister, brother, uncle enter a myriad of keyword stuffing here that everybody's doing right now. And then you've got something a little more old school that's like sport. It's still, this looks like an image, but it's actually a flourish. It's a tail that comes with, you can get like the different glyphs with different fonts. So it's all still fonts, right? So using font pairings well, you've got the ornamental with a sans serif that just kind of looks like, it goes together. And using colors and weighting, right? So making sure that the weighting in between lines of text is uniform. And admit here, okay. And now we've got some graphic based. What we're saying is, I just got a question on that one. Is the line on the first shirt a little unreadable? The colors seem very similar. It's a little bit. It actually looks a little bit better on a different monitor. I apologize. The contrast on my monitor isn't awesome, but it stands out enough for sure. It's being a functional adult every day seems a bit excessive. And now we got graphic-based examples. So completely different. These two might be seen in the same store. These two might be seen in the same store, but you might not see this one and this one in the same store, right? So that's where we can kind of have like, you've got some kind of grit here, and then you've got some kind of like outdoor element there. But yeah, so we've got a little bit of some cats with horseshoes, that Western theme. Really well done. You'll notice the spacing in between everything. So it kind of feels like the weight when you look at the composition. So if you were to draw a line here, or you were to draw a vertical line, even though it's asymmetrical, it feels very balanced, right? Same with these guys. Definitely asymmetrical. Like if we were to draw a line down the middle, you've got two heads over here and two rear ends over there, and it still feels balanced. And same with this, another perfect example of asymmetry. But anywhere you were to draw a line here, even diagonally, it feels like there's a lot of really good balance. All right, and now we're into some mixed design layout examples. So we're going to touch on, I think, 6 now of a combination of text and imagery. So these are probably the 6 most popular. You've seen them all everywhere, whether or not you've looked at them this way. And these, the box here with an X in it has traditionally been what graphic designers know in your design software when we were creating layouts and stuff for like newsprint or publications. The boxes with the X's in them always represented the images, and the straight lines were always text. So in this case, we've got, a text, an image, and text. And you can see this, and sometimes there's, a secondary line above or below, but it's typically like a text sandwich. So you've got the meat of the imagery inside sandwiched in by 2 lines of text. Another common one, super common, and probably one of my favorite, if we have to, talk about mixing these two, is 2 lines of text underneath an image. So again, when we're using, some kind of scripty font, I like to go kind of a little bit on an angle, so it's not just horizontally across, a little more interesting, a little more fun, a little more organic that way, right? 2 other really popular ones are, for lack of a better term, I've just been calling this kind of like it reminds me of a time capsule, or something like that. So you've got arch text that goes all the way from bottom left to bottom right for the most part, well past, just doing a slight arch that is here. Then we've got our image, and then usually like a closing line or a secondary byline underneath. So you've got groove is in the heart, and it says, good times are just around the corner. This is a super common design element here. I don't use it a lot, but it does have its place. This is probably my favorite. It's probably also the most common out there. So you've got a little bit of an arch. We've got a nice big image in the middle that represents kind of the sentiment or the emotion of the design. And then you've got the clincher. It is what it is. You've got a raccoon sitting there, just kind of like almost, arms in the air, giving up. And it's not great. It's key to have like that punchline at the bottom. And then our last 2 here that are also super popular is we've got an image in the middle surrounded by a text in a circle. And this can be continuing all the way around, or it can just be top and bottom. But the idea is that it's definitely within a round circle around a main focal point for an image. Don't use the Stormtrooper helmet by any means, definitely copyright infringement there, but just to show you a good example. And then the other one I like to call varsity. This is what you see all over the place too. We've seen it used in different niches now, not just collegiate or anything like that, but it's kind of got this arc on top, and then you've got the established and a year, or sometimes it'll have like some birthday ones I've seen would say like top quality and one of a kind or something like that, with a little bit of an imagery in the middle, and then again with a line of text or 2 underneath. So here again, we've got Halloween Town University. That's the meat and potatoes of it. You've got a design that tells you, kind of evokes that emotion or that feeling to kind of solidify what the design's about. And then you've got the established in whatever year. And sometimes there's the tagline, but not always necessary. So that wraps up the t-shirt design examples there. And some practical tips for using t-shirt design, all these elements, is that using mock-ups to visualize the final product. So a lot of the time we thank you, Lisa. Yeah, Halloween Town is a movie, so don't use that, but it was just a good example of the design here. The mock-ups are essential for visualizing how your design will look on an actual t-shirt. So a lot of the times we'll design on a flat, blank black background or white background, however we do. But it's crucial too to kind of take note how certain items will land when they're on the mock-up. So this is where I would suggest maybe trying something like Placeit. There's a few others out there with smart mockups, so you can kind of get an idea, and free, that you can get an idea of how it will look when it warps with things, because you want to make sure that if you have small parts of text, for example, you want to make sure that they're kind of up here where typically the shirt would be less likely to be wrinkled, right? You don't want all the little details down at the bottom of the shirt where the more wrinkles occur, because then it becomes, more difficult to read, right? If it's got more wrinkles in it or more of a, blowing in the wind or whatever it is, right? And then ensuring readability and visibility of design is make sure your design is easily readable and visible from a distance. So avoid overly intricate details that may not print well or be seen clearly on fabric. So that's another thing, is like trying to do too tiny or fine designs on something like a crew neck sweater. The odds of it getting kind of lost a little bit is greater, or on a dark heather, if you have really fine elements and you're using it on a heather garment, for example, it's going to be a lot more difficult to make out, right? Unless you've got really, really good contrast. All right, so just wanted to say, talk to me. Where are we on the overwhelm spectrum here? Are we all good? Is everybody okay? I can't really see everybody's faces now because I'm sharing my other screen, but any questions where we're at so far?
Pam says, what do you think about the fonts that have, oops, people are commenting. That have heavy lines and then fine lines as far as readability and printability?
If it makes sense for the design and it looks good, that's kind of number one, right? Contrast is good. Hierarchy is good as long as it's not fine text, like I said, on some heather garments, for example, right? So if it's like white text on, one of those heather prisms that Bella and Canvas has, if it was just on the mint, for example, the mint heather, if it wasn't heather, it would probably still show up okay. But as soon as you introduce the white flakes or the kind of gray, that tri-blend kind of fleck, it makes it way more difficult. And that's where you're going to want to have something bigger or bolder.
I'm just gonna jump in and say that, I had a font like that it was really bold and then it had the skinny lines, but it was a serif font. And you had told me, I'm just throwing it out, that you had told me that that doesn't print well on a tote because I had it on a natural canvas tote. And so I ended up switching it to something else because I didn't really realize that it wasn't gonna print well there. So that's just another.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It can print okay there, but it depends on what they have their ink saturation levels set at. So on a tote, on a canvas tote, for example, the weave of the garment is so tight. If you poured water on it, for example, it would bead up, right? Whereas on a t-shirt, it would just kind of absorb right immediately. On a tote, if you poured a little bit of water, those balls would just kind of stay there a little bit longer, right? The same thing happens when you put the ink down on it. So if it's heavy, huge, big, patches of ink, and you were to lift the tote, we know this because we printed for ourselves, and it got pretty ugly sometimes. As soon as you went to take the tote off the printer, the platen for the printer where it lays and gets printed, and move it over to the conveyor dryer, we had ink pooling and it was starting to run or tip, right? Because it wasn't absorbing. And the same can happen if you're doing really, really thin elements, right? So it either won't stay, and when you have really fine elements that don't absorb without getting dried quickly or cured quickly enough, and they move a little bit, then it looks way worse than, having a big blob that has something on the edge that you wouldn't notice from a few feet away. So. Yeah, DTF is nice that way. But at the end of the day, that's still just a heat transfer, right? So the colors will pop on that, but I don't like the feel of it. You know what I mean? It'll never be truly in the garment. It's always going to be on the garment. Yeah, it just depends on the design, because with DTF, you definitely want to leave lots of white space. You don't want to have just a big patch of rubber or, plastic. Just doesn't feel as nice to me. But the colors, yeah, you can do all the thin stuff you want all day. And that's not to say that you can't do thin prints. So like on a light garment, if they're doing CMYK only, you can print hairline and it'll look beautiful and you won't even feel the print, which is nice with the DTG. How are we with questions there? I'm not sure. I missed a couple.
More here. Which design styles sell the most on Merch by Amazon, or does it depend on the niche?
Definitely depends on the niche. Some niches just love straight text. I have one niche that I sell nothing but straight text in for that reason. But I'm not saying just put a sans serif font like this on a shirt. That can be done. But as soon, like, people are also doing that and selling. But as soon as you can introduce an element that is a little more unique and makes your text stand out a little more, stylized in some way, definitely going to set you apart, right? Also why niche research and typography are two super important.
Kelly says it's interesting because I've sold a bunch of tote bags that are also t-shirt designs. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that can totally work, right? As long as it makes sense for the layout. So if you had like a, something that would fit vertically on a shirt, you want to make sure that you've at least filled up the space a little more, to make it more of a square, right? So your t-shirt design could very well have fit. If it said, I went on vacation and all I got was this lousy t-shirt, obviously that doesn't work on a tote, right? It's not to say that some designs won't translate. It's just that, you always try to keep the end user, the product, the printed, completed product in mind when you're designing.
yeah, and my thin part of the font that I was talking about was super thin, and the other part was very thick, so I think that's why he had said that. Let's see, Amy is asking which style lasts longer though which style lasts longer through repeated washings?
The style of printing?
Yeah,
I think DTF will hold up. So heat transfer vinyl, number one, will probably outlast everything on there. And if it's done properly, everyone looks at it like it's cheap, but if it's done properly, you won't be able to pick it off without putting a hole in your shirt. It'll outlast the garment. Sometimes some old worn shirts, you'll see the shirt splitting at the edge. So if there was a box here or a piece of vinyl, the shirt will split there. The print will be fine. And then that's, it'll shred away over, like I'm talking years of use here. Like the garment will break down before the vinyl will. I mean, it's plastic, so it's gonna last forever. That said, next would probably be the heat transfer vinyl, the DTF, sorry, which is direct to film. It's essentially direct to garment, but onto a transfer that is with adhesive powder on it and then pressed on a shirt. But then sublimation is also never usually going to fade because that's a chemical reaction with gases in colors on polyester. So that's something that will also never fade. Direct to garment and screen printing are probably the two worst in terms of longevity, but you can also, like it depends on the quality of the print. I'm looking at a shirt in my closet there that I've had for 3 years now that we printed, and I wear it, probably every other week easily for 3 years, and it still looks pretty good, right? I mean, we printed that ourselves, so we were able to kind of govern the entire process that way.
I think we're good. They're just having a discussion about the different styles in there.
All right. All right, next on is poster design. So the factors considered to ensure that your designs are effective and eye-catching include size and format variations. So posters come in various sizes. There's A4, A3, A2, etc. Each size requires different considerations for text size, image resolution, and overall layout, of course, right? You don't want to have something that has a ton of text on it if it's going to be this big, or, you need to be kind of way up close to read it. Again, it's intended to be seen from a distance, so make sure your design works well for the intended size. And the second thing is major element here is balancing text and imagery. So effective posters balance text and imagery to convey a clear message. Too much text can be overwhelming, while too little can leave the viewer confused. Aim for a harmonious balance where both elements complement each other. That should be pretty self-explanatory there. So some practical tips for keeping all that in mind is create a focal point to guide where the viewer's eye goes. So use design elements like the color we talked about, contrast, size, and variations of size, and strategic placement to create focal points that guide the viewer's eye through the poster. For example, that bold headline, like in the example we saw, the top, the eye-catching image in the center maybe on a t-shirt design can draw attention and lead the viewer to the supporting text. Using space effectively to avoid clutter, I would utilize white space, which is the empty areas around your design. What I consider the buffer is what we'd say in layman's terms. It gives your elements in your design room to breathe. It helps avoid clutter and makes your poster more visually appealing and easier to read. And I would absolutely you know, implore you to make sure that you're using white space effectively in all your designs, not just posters. So here's a few good examples here. So you've got, you know, we're looking at the color, the composition, the balance, everything, right? So when we plant, it's got equal spacing here, equal spacing here. You've got almost the same amount of space between the top of this end of the D here, the tail, and the bottom of the word plant, as you do down here, as you do above it. It's all very well spaced and balanced. You've got something coming over a line here, but also touching the line here. So while it's asymmetrical that way on the left to right, it still has the same amount of balance. And you know, the good deeds and what we plant seem to offset the flowers here. Again, if you were to cut this right down the middle here, the little bit of flowers up top and the density of the flowers on the bottom seem to give it that equal weighting, right? No matter how you'd slice it. And then this one is a custom one. It's your favorite quote in an amazing old vintage typewriter font. This is super smart for a few reasons. And then, you know, sign the author, because you're not listing something that could be copyrighted or trademarked. And I'm not saying to go ahead and print copyrighted or trademarked stuff, but if you were going to do this and a customer, you know, some websites, for example, will have a disclaimer that you say that you have the right to use whatever you're submitting for them to print. They try to absolve themselves that way. You know, legal red tape, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing it, but it's a nice way to be able to just offer whatever you want. Your favorite quote, amazing old vintage typewriter font. This is nice, centered, not overdone. We see this a lot too in like a lot of print media, print collateral. Business cards, people want to jam them up. It's not an ad space. It's not something, you didn't buy ad space in a newspaper to put all your stuff on, you know, it's a business card, right? It's supposed to have a logo, contact information, the pertinence. When you have something like this with nice space around it, the font itself becomes aesthetically pleasing. It becomes a focal point, right? It's not always just about what the quote says. It's about how it looks when you read it. You can see good seeds from across the room, but when you get, you know, a little closer to it, because it strikes you, it's like good seeds. What about it? Nice imagery. When we plant good seeds, good things grow. So these are two great examples, I think. And then you got, you know, something a little more fun. Instead of just having do the things that make you happy in a block of text, adding color makes you happy, right? Ultimately, these colors are you know, they're bright, they're cheery. The font choice is a little more organic. It's not as rigid or structured as something like this. And then on the other hand, something nice and clean with ample spacing here. This becomes, I mean, this quote is great. It's Anthony Bourdain's. Encourage you guys to read it once we share the deck, but it becomes more about how visually appealing these items are, right? That's the effective marketing behind all of the text-based stuff. I think those look great. And then we're into mug design. So when designing for mugs, there are unique factors considered due to the product's shape and size, of course, right? So things will wrap around. And if you wanted to have something that didn't wrap around, you want to make sure that it is not too wide, because it looks, you know, a little bit more difficult to read, right? You want it to be able to be legible at a glance, the readability there. Otherwise, you're going to have to make it deliberately go around, right? So it either has to be intentional, either way, right? You don't want it to look like it's a little too wide, because then it looks more like a mistake and somebody won't be able to pinpoint exactly why it doesn't look right to them. They'll just know that it doesn't look as good as somebody else's over here that was kind of like all in one shot. So that said, design placement. Mugs offer different design placement options, such as the front, back, or wraparound design that goes all the way around the mug. Think about how the design will be viewed when the mug is held. Keeping design simple and impactful, because mugs have a limited surface area, so simpler designs tend to work best. Avoid overly complex details that can be lost or hard to see on the curved surface of the mug. And I'll say that there is a caveat. If done correctly, you know, it can look good. And I'll show you an example of that too. So we want to consider the curvature of the mug that can distort the design. So it's essential, like I said earlier, to keep this in mind when creating your layout. So avoid placing critical elements near the edges where the curve is most pronounced. So if you're, you know, looking down here, it may kind of just throw the balance off. It may throw the kind of the visual appeal off a little bit. So Ensure your designs are also scalable and legible at small sizes. So make sure that your design looks good even when scaled down to fit the mug. So like, for example, the design we mentioned that was good on a tote that was designed for a t-shirt, that's all great and fine, but if it's really wordy and a really involved design and you shrunk it down to fit on a mug, it won't necessarily make sense, right? Or it might be way too difficult to read. Test your designs at different sizes. Ensure all elements remain clear and readable. And this, again, I would suggest for sure to use the lifestyle mock-up so you can see how, the smart mock-ups, how it kind of bends on the mug. And that can make or break a design too, right? How it's presented. The design could be amazing, but then having it a little too wide or have it curve a little too much can make or break a sale, quite literally. So here's one mug that is full of stuff, but you'll notice the space. So it's mug of positivity. I thought it was, it's busy, but it's not overwhelming. At first glance, it's like, oh, what is that? And then you've got mug of positivity right in the, it's punny, which is always great, right in the middle. But then you've got like these chunks of text. So they used this font. Obviously, you know that these 3 lines of text go together. You know that this over here also goes together. You know that this goes together. You know that these go together, right? And they're all separated by just enough white space that you can, or negative space that you can, it kind of keeps them contained to their own components, and it becomes almost like a treasure map that you're following of really fun things to read, right? It reminds me almost of like reading the back of the cereal box as a kid. It was like the ones that were interesting, right? It was like something that keep your interest peaked. You Are Enough on a little bit of a blue background there just to stand out on its own. So every little element here is standing out on its own, but they're all unique in their own right, but they all seem to work cohesively, and it still feels like a well-composed design, right? So this is one example on the extreme end. Otherwise, we've got some really nice, easy, bold, clear ones here. Use less sugar. It's great. Let you know exactly. It's a reminder to yourself. This is the other thing that you want to make sure, right? Is it going to be for the person using the mug to read regularly, or is it going to be outward facing? So is it for the people that are walking past you? Like some of them can be, don't talk to me unless, unless you know this is my second coffee, for example, right? That would be something that would be outward facing for people walking past. If you're doing any of the customization, you know that I'm a fan of, well, first with sublimation at all, I'm a fan of the watercolors because it hides a lot of the ghosting that can occur with the gaseous transfer of the inks to the mug, right? So as soon as you introduce watercolor here, like, see how nice and clean this looks? Simple font, not overdone. It's just something who might be more minimalist. It's a pop of color on a beautiful white countertop with white backsplash, whatever, all clean lines. And you've got this tiny little pop of color that sits there. It would look great even sitting out if you were home staging, for example, right? Having a mug there or something like that. It works the same principle as people would have. You can see the greenery in the background here. A little pop of fake greens or something, or maybe aloe, or I don't know what, just to add a splash of color. But definitely super easy to do. It's just one word. It's the name. Super simple. It looks clean and classy and super visible from a distance too, even for a mug. So here's another example here. You can use your words here. Again, with sublimation, I would suggest if you're going to use the scripts, at least use some watercolor effect or something that has a little bit of difference in the background, so it's not just straight edges, unless you're going to go bold. 2 nice and clean options here, and now instead of having it wrap around the mug or anything like that, it's either for you or for them, but it's concise and it doesn't wrap too far around, so you can see the whole design. If this was like an inch wider, for example, it would be a little bit difficult to read at first glance. You don't ever want to have to like turn the mug a quarter turn. You either want to be looking at it and turning the entire mug intentionally, or looking at it at a glance and seeing it immediately. You never want to be like on that cusp, because it means that the design wasn't intended for that space or wasn't executed properly. This is what you don't want to do. Have a whole bunch of text on here and try to fit it into a place. And then like the spacing here, you've got these big random patches of white space, negative space here. there's no space between the A and always here. It's hard to read, but there's no space there. There's no space there. This one looks like it's touching, and then you've got some massive amounts of space here. It's messy. It's hard to read. This design may have been intended to be on a poster or a quote or something like that, but it definitely doesn't look like it should be on this mug, right? And so to recap, what we covered today was the basics of design layouts. We explored the essential design elements of typography, imagery, color, and composition. We also discussed the importance of balance and visual hierarchy in creating effective designs. I did see a comment earlier that somebody said there was a lot of aha moments there, so I hope that is the case for most of you. And t-shirt design layouts, we covered key considerations like size, placement of designs, types of designs that work well on t-shirts. We covered tips for ensuring readability and visibility. For poster design layouts, we discussed size and format variations, balancing the text. Balance becomes super important with poster stuff or anything that might have lots of wording or that you want to do a little bit more uniquely, design-wise, aesthetically. And some practical tips for creating focal points and using the space. Mug design layouts, we talked about design placement, keeping designs simple and impactful while considering the curvature, or the shape of any substrate that you're printing on, ensuring scalability and legibility when creating mockups as well as when printed. So, looking forward to your feedback, Q&A time. We can knock out some stuff here. Let me know your thoughts here, guys. I know it can be a lot. I just want to make sure that it wasn't too much.
I have a question.
Shoot.
Can you go back up to I think it was the poster with the grow the plant one?
A poster with
Plant, grow.
okay. Share my screen.
Yeah, the good seeds, yeah, sorry, couldn't remember what it said. So the good seeds, those fonts are touching each other. And what do you think of that?
I would have probably spaced them personally. I would have moved this good up a little bit.
Okay,
But if you look at this particular shop, and I'll have to find it again, it should be in my search history at least, or my browser history then. They have this aesthetic going through their entire shop. So their whole shop has, the same fonts, the same aesthetic. They're touching in certain places. This is a super cohesive shop that way, and they've done really well with what they do. But personally, on a one-off design, I would have probably spaced this out a little bit.
okay, thank you.
No problem. Good question. Yes, what Jackie said there, the space, and yep, I agree. What do you think about the key part of the message remains mostly unseen? I'm not sure. The question, good things grow. Got it. Yeah, I mean, this particular one, it's an entire aesthetic they have, but again, like I was saying with the other one, and even over here and the next one, it becomes less about the message itself and more about the aesthetic in the room. Like people want to pop a green on a sterilely white kitchen space, for example, or going out to the garden. The message matters, but it's the aesthetic behind it. It's the composition of the design that matters more. It's what resonates, right? The message on it, whatever emotion you get from the color and everything, the message almost becomes secondary in the same way that SEO can become secondary if the design just looks right. But yeah, I would probably if I was to redo this, I would move this up, not touch them, make the flowers a little smaller, and maybe good things grow bigger, a little less space. So put them closer together and then blow them up a little bit. That's probably what I would do there.
Perfect, thanks.
Makes sense. All right. Stop share there. Any other questions? Learned so much. Oh, good. All right, so I did have homework. I don't think we said the homework, did we?
Mark is asking about mixing fonts. He just says, what about mixing fonts? Mark, if you want to unmute or elaborate on that a little bit.
Yep. Sandra had a question but got kicked out. Okay, sorry, Sandra.
Pam is asking, I noticed that Kittle has a new feature for style that from what I can tell is a way to set up features that are particular to the designer and their brand. Do you think it's a good idea to have a particular style in creating a brand? Could that work against you?
I think it's a great idea. If you can, like that one poster with the good things or with the green, I'm gonna have to find that shop then and share it because they've created, yeah, like a curated brand. Like any major brand you think of has a look, right? They have a look. There's something you recognize. You recognize the green and yellow of John Deere. You recognize, you know, the angle of the photography of Nike and Adidas, right? A lot of the times you see people running and it's like the shots are looking up at them. It's because when you are looking up at something, it evokes this like sense of power, right? So these kinds of things are all done intentionally. So anything you can do to kind of set yourself apart that way, I think is a great thing. There's no, you know, I don't know how that would work against you unless you don't have a particular niche. But then you're all over the place already anyway. So I just think that would be a, you know, a slippery slope too. If you're going to be, especially if you're going to be all over the place in terms of niches, at least try to have a cohesive design style at the very least. Hope that helps.
Okay.
I will share the homework before we're
What?
here, since we're at the hour mark, and then we can get back to some questions. You guys can see that? Yeah, okay. So the homework assignment for this one is basic design practice. So we're going to create simple designs for t-shirt, poster, or mug, or any of the particular POD any particular POD product you might have in your shop. It doesn't have to be limited to these. Choose 2 of them though. Create a design for one product and then manipulate it for the second product. So in this case, the t-shirt design that was mentioned before that you put on a tote, well, make sure that it fits properly, but you can use the same design, but make sure that try to pick, you know, in this exercise, something that is completely 2 different, you know, products, maybe sizes would be beneficial. So I want to see like that you've had to change it a little bit, right? To make sure that it fits the actual product. So you're going to want to manipulate it for the second product. Focus on the key elements of typography. Number 1, imagery, color, and composition. Of course, if you're only doing a design-based or graphic-based design, then you can leave the typography out of it. But 2/3 of the top 3 are going to have typography in there. Make sure your designs are balanced and have clear visual hierarchy. Use a mockup tool again, like Placeit. Kittle has one built in, or even, you know, Printify's or whichever POD you're using. You can put your design on there for those mockups to at least visualize your design. You don't necessarily have to use those mockups in your shop. You can buy them after, but at least get an idea of what it looks like with the smart mockups. And then submit your design, of course, in the homework thread for feedback. So we're definitely going to be sharing that. Okay.
Then I will just say that the next call is on Wednesday and it's design titles and tags hot seats. So looking forward to that. And do you want to go back to Q&A then?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. If anybody has to drop off, feel free. We're just going to go a little bit longer here. Finish up some questions. Mark, regarding the fonts, about mixing fonts, like here they have italic and straight fonts. I believe he was talking about what we were just looking at.
Yeah, font pairing is great as long as you're not using more than 2. Like think of it in terms of font pairing. Like you can use 3. Some people get away with 4, like on that one mug. There's a few different ones, but it's done intentionally, right? Otherwise, usually they're font pairing. So that said, it's inherently like, you know, the numbers in groups of 2. They definitely complement each other. It looks good. I would continue to do that, right? I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but font pairings are great. It's a great way to give you that visual hierarchy as well, right?
Okay,
Typically,
and Mila says, Sandra, for some reason, got booted off of the Zoom. That wasn't us, so I'm not sure what happened there, or if she wants to get back on, she just,
so you can just
I
go back
think,
to the event and click on the
yeah.
link there.
So anyway, Mila, thank you so much for letting us know. And this is the question from Sandra. I wanted to know if Jay could share some of his go-to fonts, Evergreen and Holiday, to help us with designs. I get lost choosing them, and it takes me a while to say, okay, maybe this one.
Oh man. Okay. So I have
I
like
think that's on
thousands.
our list of ideas, but
Yeah, I have thousands and thousands of fonts. And so what I had to do was completely, you know, delete the library that I use that I have activated, and I just went back and added my top 100, and that was kind of it. And even then, I'll stick to like I go in waves. So for the last little while, well, Futura has always been there for me, probably 10 years. Solid, maybe longer, 20 years now. It's timeless classic and it just doesn't go anywhere. Looks great, it's clean. Depends on your niche too, right? If you're doing, you know, some like the wildflower stuff, you're gonna want to use more like the cottage core. You're not gonna want to have a clean minimalist font necessarily. Minimalist could work, but it's not gonna be, you know, blocky or hard edges, right? So it really depends on your niche. Um, but yeah, we can share some font pairings. That was something that we that I wanted to do. Like Sheila and I would talked about, and Stacy too, about sharing font pairings so that you guys can have kind of ideas of 2 fonts to Mark's point or in question that work well together. Uh, I'm a fan of the classics. So like Cooper Black is nice. Also timeless. But again, it depends on the design, right? Like I use fonts in a way, and I implore all of you to try to get your heads around this too, but using them in a way that evokes a certain element of emotion, right? So you've got the phrase itself, but it's also about how it looks, how, you know, the readability element as opposed to legibility, right? Like how the whole package looks, what kind of emotion you've got. The typical consumer will spend about 8 seconds on your page before going to another page. So in that 8 seconds, and then they will know if they're going to add to cart in the first 3 seconds. So, you know, cutting those timelines down. And this has been historically the numbers. Like it's with attention spans these days since COVID, I feel like it might even be half that. I feel like you got about 2 to 2.5 seconds tops, you know, to secure whether or not that customer is going to add it to cart. That's the very least you want them to do. You also want them to check out and convert, but you want to make sure that your item is in their cart so they can at least be retargeted with your, in the cart coupons and different things like that that Etsy has already for you. Amazon is great with doing that too. If you have stuff in your cart, you know, they'll send you an email. Did you forget about this? Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, definitely, you know, it's not just about the content, it's about how it looks. That's the visual element. What we, you know, emotionally connect with colors. Again, the color theory, I think it's going to be a good one for font pairing to go together. So that'll be good.
what about a solid go-to serif font?
Solid go-to serif. I don't really have one. I mean, Times New Roman is great. Garamond is classic. There are some, I'll have to look it up now, but there are some that have a little bit more of a swirl that I was using in my Christmas designs the last 2 years. So I can't think of it offhand, but I'll definitely look it up. It's got a couple of little glyphs. So like it'll have the tail on the K will come out and swing out as an option. So if it's like in the middle of the word, it adds a nice little kind of element to it. I'll find that one. I think it looks really cool. Other than that, serif, I mean, the Cooper Black has serifs. But yeah, I think those ones would be good. Yeah, it's again, like to Tommy's point, it's good for delicate design. So if you go back to the typography training again, there's so much in there that is going to, you know, be valuable for everything that we touch on going forward. you also don't want to overuse a serif font. Gone are the days of the typewriter serifs in a book, right? They're not as easily digestible or readable as the sans serif font, which is why all our chats are in this, all the digital stuff you're reading now. Psychology, the science has said that the attention spans are longer, better with cleaner fonts, right? So you're seeing these serif fonts as more of like title things now, or like less wordy. You're not going to want to have a full paragraph of just serif, 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 serif. It's not as clean or clear. And a lot of the substrates you're printing on. So if it's like direct to garment and you have a thin serif font, it doesn't look as great necessarily as it would if it was a little more formal, like to, you know, a delicate design, to Tommy's point, on an invite, like the ones we covered in the typography training, right? They have their place. They are not to be overused. That's for sure.
Okay, we'll take a couple more. It's 10
Sure.
after. Do you think it's necessary to create designs with colors that look good on both light and dark shirts? Or create design and only offer on shirt colors that look best? I spend a lot of time creating multiple versions and modifying designs to look good on both black and white. That was from Scott Grant.
Depends on the niche. The niches I'm in, I rarely design on white. I offer white as a color option, but I only ever make a design for it if a customer actually orders it. I keep it there because it's just one more option. But some of them I've disabled white on my designs because I don't want to have to redo the design to make sure it looks good on white if I have a lot of white elements or light elements in it. Yeah, definitely a niche thing. This is why, you know, it's imperative to figure out what the target audience wants. Are they going to want to wear a white shirt or a black shirt? Typically, those are two very different customers, right? The only reason I've started wearing a lot more lighter colors is because it's too bloody hot in the sun here. Otherwise, I've always been, you know, dark heather navy, or black, traditionally.
Brian says he uses veneer font a lot. Carla says, what about recommended fonts for style? For example, fake definition style shirts can use Bookmania. University style can use College Block 2.0, just random examples.
Yeah, I totally like those fonts are iconic to those particular design styles or niches, right? So like your definition design style, you want to use that typewriter font. You want to use something like yeah, typewriter. What did you have there? Bookmania. I'm not familiar with that particular one specifically, but it looks like the old school typewriter, right? That's the stuff that we're used to seeing in a dictionary, right? It's not a Google search result you're mimicking now. You're mimicking a dictionary definition that you found in an actual paper book, right? So that absolutely makes sense. Same with the college, that varsity style design. They got the college ones. There's serif and sans serif college fonts, the varsity style stuff. Those are the things that are just iconically that. It's the university, you know, varsity shirt. So yeah, definitely a place.
Okay. Amy is asking, will you be offering training on fonts on particular products? I think we
I
kind of
can-
went over
I can-
that.
Pardon?
I'm sorry, we kind of went over that in typography and then again today.
Yeah, well, I think font pairings might work.
Mhm.
We can address it with specific products on that. I'll try to work that in there a little more than we already have, but you definitely want to make sure that you're, you know, niche based. So knowing the niche research, identifying your ideal customer, what it is they want out of that particular niche, like we've talked about, you know, if you're designing things for dog owners or pet owners. Pet owner is a little too broad. I would go to dog owners or cat owners. But even then, the dog owner, like what a somebody who's buying a Great Dane versus somebody who's buying a Morkie, completely two different people. Typically, demographics are different. Everything's different. The color of the design is different. You know, so knowing what fonts to pair with particular elements like that. So knowing the niche, knowing the ideal target market, those particular products will surface. And they should become obvious if you can lock down who it is you want to target as paramount, right? Knowing that niche inside out. That's why I always suggest you don't have to stick with something you know, but it's so much easier if you do. That learning curve just becomes way shorter because it's something that you might actually buy and wear yourself, right? And if you wouldn't wear it and your friends wouldn't wear it, then ask them why, right? Like there's what's the missing component there, right? Hope that makes sense.
Okay, last question. Do you
Sure.
personalize a lot?
I offer it. I don't do it. I like to give the illusion of personalization. So what I'll do is like I'll offer certain things, and if it's birthdays, for example, certain birth years, and you can leave a personalization box. It's optional. If they don't change the year, it's done as it is. But like if it's something that could be mom or dad or mama or dada, I'll have both designs done and listed. But if somebody asks for that, I'll just say, customizable or whatever. But nobody ever asks for anything other than that. I do sell some where I customize certain years. Like there's one that's like the dad, grandpa, and legend, and then it's whatever particular year. One of those sells quite a bit, has for a couple of years now. There's a ton of them out there now though. So definitely hard kind of nut to crack if you're going to start that now. But those are the ones that I kind of limit it to. I don't. So Hello Custom in terms of that doesn't work with all of like having three or more variations yet, or at least I haven't found it to work. So I've limited what I offer the customization or personalization on. It's nice to offer. I want to offer more, but I also I like the design element, so I don't want to outsource more. I kind of struggle with that, but I don't offer a ton. I can't say I offer a ton, to be honest. I probably should offer more, but I feel like if it's not automated, it becomes more work, right? Obviously.
Okay,
Oh, maybe she's in the waiting room. I don't know.
no, nobody's in the waiting. There's an issue. I will tell you about it after the call.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Just a reminder that it's recorded.
yep. All right,
That's
I think we're good to go.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all for tuning in. Another great one. Not as many questions as I was expecting today, but that's good. Hopefully it wasn't too much. Hopefully you didn't feel like you're drinking from the fire hose. Hopefully this made sense. Please do let me know your thoughts and the feedback there too, because this is going to help us, dictate how we kind of go and progress. So have a great day, folks. We'll see you guys in 2 days for sure.
Okay, the recording will be up within 48 hours and the homework will be up later today. Thanks. Have a good day.
Great training.
Thank you. Awesome. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, thanks, Jay.
You're very welcome. Thank you.